Yeah, what's good, Josh? Your man, the Bigga P, and here to share my thoughts on the two cards from yesterday. The first one I will talk about is the one on Showtime, Showtime International. Main evented was by Anthony Joshua going for his first title against Prince Charles Martin. But first, before that, I want to talk about the other fight that they televised, which was Lee Selby defending his featherweight title against Eric Hunter. I didn't have really any expectations for this fight at all because I mean, although I've heard of Eric Hunter, I had never seen him actually fight. So the first couple of rounds of the fight to me was like, okay, Eric Hunter's kind of slick. He's moving this way and that. He's pretty hard to hit. He was making Selby look a little slow, and then in the second round, he blasted him to the canvas with one beautiful left hook. And I'm thinking to myself, Selby had never been down. So okay, this fight we might have an upset going. But what happened as the fight went on is Hunter, although I liked what he was doing in the ring, he wasn't letting his hands go enough. And usually that's the more frustrating side of me. Like I said, I love the sweet science behind the box. I love what he was doing, but he just was not letting his hands go enough to actually really make Selby pay. Because Selby didn't look all that great to me, but he was outworking him. And then after that, the referee started calling these little, these little bullshit fouls, talking about, oh, okay, it's low blow, low blow, low blow, and it really wasn't. The blows weren't really low, but you could tell that those calls, took a toll mentally on Hunter. I mean, because he looked like just the way you could tell by his body language that he just, he didn't give a, he just started giving a fuck about being in the fight, which was kind of sad. And even then, like I said, I mean, he did what he had to do, but unfortunately, he didn't wake up enough in time. And in combination with that, I mean, Selby cruised to a decision win. Selby to me. I mean, ever since he won the belt off Gradovich, who I'll be talking about later, I haven't been overly impressed with him. I mean, I've seen him before, and he was okay. And I have to say, but Selby though, I always, and I'll give him a little props for coming into Big L. I mean, I think he came into Lifestyles of Poor and Dangerous, the actual song, and I'm thinking to myself, the guy is a hip hop head. But the guy hasn't fought all that great to me. I mean, he'll work. I mean, fights. I mean, he'll turn it up a little bit and he'll try to outwork you. But I mean, for what I saw of Gradovich, I mean, I didn't. I mean, he seems to have a little bit of struggle in him. I mean, the fight with Montiel. I mean, maybe that may be Montiel. That was just more of Montiel. Maybe just having one of those, last good fight type of fights. But then I see the same type of thing with Hunter, who, like I said, who actually managed to drop him this time around. So Selby is probably the most vulnerable of the featherweight champions. Um, hopefully it makes but hopefully I do actually want to see him in an actual fight with an actual contender in that division, or maybe even another champion, just to really see what he's made out of. As for Hunter, I mean, like I say, he put forth a good effort, but if he was just a little bit more offensive, the fight could have been, the fight could have easily have been a little bit more different. Um, but like I said, I still lose that fight. Hopefully, maybe next time he'll get a chance. I mean, I'll actually see him fight on American TV, before he gets another big fight. Um, so yeah, so now we go on to the main event, which was Anthony Joshua, as I mentioned, going for his first title shot against Prince Charles Martin. Um, just to talk about Prince Charles Martin for a little bit. Imagine because Prince Charles Martin before, prior to even getting into the title picture, I've only seen him on like PBC cards. Um, Big guy, okay puncher, but that's all I've actually got from him. I mean, yeah, I mean, he was just, he was beating up jobbers, and that's fine. But it wasn't like he wasn't. I didn't see anything in him that said, okay, he was anything separated from the rest, because he was a work in progress. So imagine my surprise, where I know originally before he had a fight, I think it was either facing either Mansour or Brazil, or somebody on a PBC card, and then afterwards he pulled out because somehow Martin actually held a number 2 ranking with the IBF, and the IBF at the time had an issue. I think stripped Tyson of their belt for something going for, I guess, for not fighting that mandatory, even though I think he had a return bout with Vlad. It was a whole bunch of nonsense. But either way, Fury lost his belt, you know, on in that way. So he had to fill the vacancy, and then Glaskov was the number one contender, and Charles Martin. So Charles Martin pulled out of that fight to go in that fight. I mean, it's one of those fights where you can't blame him. Like, it's not every day a fighter gets a shot at a heavyweight title, and then someone like him actually wins the heavyweight title via injury. And again, it was a fight that didn't answer any questions because neither Glaskov or Martin looked good in the 3 rounds of the fight until Caesar suffered that leg injury. So we had someone like Charles Martin holding the IBF title, and you just you're like wondering like how or why. But the one thing I will say, and I do respect about Martin about this, is he could have easily sat on his title, and that's what I thought Al would have actually done with someone like him since he was such a work in progress. But no, I mean, he went out and he challenged, I believe that's how it went, he challenged Anthony Joshua, who himself only had 15 fights, had less fights than he did, but a little bit more talented. But I think he even had, he was a little bit more talented for sure, and I think he also showed more, both his strengths and weaknesses. The fight with White really, showed that Joshua, may have a little chin issue or he has some stamina problems, but at least he was able to show that he was also able to come back from adversity to win the fight. So as time went on, this fight got more intriguing to me. I don't understand it. I don't understand why it did, but it got more intriguing to me because I think more or less Charles Martin's the X factor. Is he really a pedestrian fighter? Is he really too inexperienced to be in a fight like this? Or do you have someone like Anthony Joshua, who's also inexperienced like this, although a little bit more polished, as a pro? Like, who's inexperienced? What issues would be the one that would actually, win or lose them the fight? It turned out to be Martin was just a little bit more pedestrian as I thought he would, and was too inexperienced to be in a fight like this, much less to hold a heavyweight title. The first round, pretty much. Although I admit the build up to this fight was actually pretty good. The face off was pretty good, and then you have Martin walking around talking about, I walk this earth like a god, shit like that. That's like, dude. Dude was having me dying with some of the comments that he was talking about. When the fight came though, his entrance to the fight was also pure comedy. But when the fight began, you could see that he was a little bit in over his head. Pretty much it wasn't anything more other than Joshua, pretty much laying a straight left, the right hand behind it. Joshua was leaving his jab out a little bit too long, just lingering and pawing. He wasn't, and he fought like a man that wasn't sure of himself or what to actually do in the ring, and that which led to the second round, which again it was Martin throws a southpaw jab, and then Joshua counters with one quick right hand, drops him. And then you could tell in Martin, you could tell on the ground that he was like, "Oh shit, what the hell did he just hit me with?" And he did, and he took he took an 8 or 9 count. He pops back up. He gets up. He throws the same jab again, and again Joshua counters again with another right hand and drops him again. And this is where you could tell that Martin probably wanted out of the fight. He didn't want no parts of this. However, but he did this thing. He did the same thing that what's his name? Monroe Jr. did with Triple G. Except the referee called him out on his bullshit. He counted to 10, but he was up. He didn't stop the fight. He told him he wanted to go on, and then didn't want to go on. In this particular case, Martin was clear-eyed. He was ready to go. He could have popped up at any time. He could have popped up at the count of 7 or 8. And then he decided to do that whole pop-up at 10, just a slight second before that came out, before the referee waved it off. Talking about it was a fast count. It wasn't a fast count. I could tell he wanted out of the fight, and the referee didn't give him give him that chance because he was not popping up. He should have popped up a lot earlier than he did. So yeah, so Anthony Joshua now is the IBF heavyweight champion of the world, and it was great. Like I said, Joshua is someone I followed since the Olympics. I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay. I was a fan, but I was said, a couple of things even before the stamina issues, like he had to cut some bulk off because I didn't want him looking like Frank Bruno, and subsequently having some of Frank Bruno's issues that he had with carrying the bulk that he did. So I was glad that he actually did cut the weight off a little bit, cut some of his muscle off a little bit, and he looked. He's still him stuff is still a work in progress. His footwork is still not all there yet, and like I said, he didn't go too many rounds. But this Joshua holding that belt is definitely a shot in the arm, as it's just another shot in the arm to maybe a reemergence as for the heavyweight division just to be the glamour division that it used to be. So pretty much the next fight. I would imagine it's gonna be. I can't say soft touch because Martin was probably as much of a soft touch as you can get, even though he was the champion. I remember I saw some readings about Malik Scott had a contract to fight him. And I would imagine he's probably gonna get someone of that. He's not gonna go after Hay or Fury, or Fury has the WBA tournament, so who even knows when he's gonna be available unless he gives up that belt. And I don't think he's gonna give up that belt to go to a belt, go fight for a belt from the sanctioned right to actually strip him of it in the first place. And I'm aware that that belt is paper, and hopefully Joshua will go a long way to eventually trying to legitimize his belt. And I know if it's not Malik, then he can go after whoever the winner is between Wilder and Povetkin. Both fights, I think, probably politically he can make without problem. So hopefully that'll be the case. But I'm pretty sure his next fight, I think I read it's probably July 9th, is probably going to be his first title defense. As for Prince Charles Martin, from what I read, probably the best comment I read on his situation was from Steve Kim when I read his Twitter. He mentioned that Prince Charles had probably one of the worst, but yet one of the most lucrative short-term heavyweight title runs of all time. And that's probably the best way to actually put it. Dude probably in the couple of fights he had, the two title fights he's been in, probably made him, made several million. And that is probably more than what he made in his other previous 20-something fights. So it's a business decision. And, it was more or less, it was a business decision where, if he pulled it off, he'd probably get more money, and I'd be like mind blown if he actually did pull it off. Or he would, or like I said, he got a couple of money. But now, I think, now that his brief time with the heavyweight title is over, my best is for him to maybe get back in the gym and really, for a guy his size, he should probably be like maybe 235, 235 at least, because like I said, he didn't come into the ring in the best of condition. I could tell this from the weigh-in photos, but I think it would be a good time for him to really, I wouldn't say I don't know his trainer, I don't know his trainer situation at all. But it would be I think it would be to really rededicate himself to the sport, and who knows, maybe you might see him in a title fight again. I hope he doesn't demoralize. He doesn't get demoralized. But like I said, it's not many. Like I said, not many people in this position would have actually jumped into a slightly tougher fight than usual. He could have sat on his title, and bam, for a little bit before fighting someone like Joshua, but. I have to give him respect for that, so kudos. So hopefully maybe he may make his way back into sport. It'll probably be a longer road, but, we'll see. But, stranger things have happened in boxing. After all, that's how he became heavyweight champion, right? So now I'm moving on to the HBO pay-per-view, Manny Pacquiao versus Tim Bradley 3. When this fight was announced, I wasn't overly interested in this, as in both Pacquiao and Bradley had other fights in there. But as the fight took hold, the undercard started shaping up, and it started shaping up pretty well. I thought when he started announcing some of these fights, I'm like, okay, all right, okay, it piqued my interest a little bit. So let's start on that. I think the first fight was Jose Ramirez versus Manny Perez. This was a solid opener, and it was a great opener, to be honest. It fell short of fight of the year type status, but it came close. My comments about this fight. I mean, Ramirez is still, like I say, he's still working. I mean, this was his test, and he worked to keep his zero in this fight. He had to work 10 rounds against the determined Manny Perez. Manny Perez, I would say, probably impressed me slightly more than Ramirez did. I mean, Ramirez was throwing some hellacious combinations, but Perez's body work, which was largely ignored slash unnoticed, except for everyone in the HBS that fought Roy, was doing work, and that was the type. I think that was the type of thing because that was the type of fight that changed the fight. Ramirez was a little bit more confident, but after the body attack in Perez, it turned into a grinding fight. And Ramirez was literally throwing the kitchen sink at him, and it was. And meanwhile, I saw like Perez, unfortunately, as his punch started losing steam. However, his punches up top weren't as effective. However, he was smart though, and he was using, and you could tell the punches that he lost steam. The punches that he did put a lot in were to the body, and that was the part where that probably really stopped Ramirez from actually really waiting in on him as he was getting busted up until the 10th round, where Ramirez had finally was able to get him in a little trouble, and at that point, if Perez had actually went down, I would have said, hey, stop the fight, because he was getting busted up, he was blows from it, and then his ear, reminded me of that fight with Margarito and Lujan. His ear started looking a little lopsided. So that fight went a distance. I gave that. I rose up from my couch. I gave that a standing ovation. I liked what I saw. Ramirez is a guy that has plenty of work he needs to do, but he needed that. To me, that was a good gut check fight. And Perez, I hope. I mean, he took. I think he took probably 80% of the punches he actually that landed on him to the head, somewhere around there, 85%. I forgot the exact number, but it was in that range. Hopefully he gets thoroughly checked out in that fight, in the hospital from that fight. And I would love to see him, like I said, I would love to see him. Hopefully maybe either on another pay-per-view or whenever Top Rank does another one of their True TV boxing series or whatever. So yeah, I was highly impressed by that fight. It was a damn good opener. Damn good. The next fight was Oscar Valdez versus Evgeny Gradovich. This fight intrigued me a little bit, and then this was the fight I've gone back and forth with people on the forums that I post on about. Valdez is a prospect and a half. He's a top tier prospect, but it was one of those things where I was thinking to myself, yes, he's tough, but he's facing Gradovich. Gradovich, who's Mexican Russian, known for a very high volume style of fighting, throws punches upon punches, and he'll wear you out over the distance, or he'll stop you late in the distance. He's that type of guy. I myself I'm a fan of Gradovich too, and I was a fan, when he beat Billy Dib, and I was a fan throughout his ride, and was disappointed, when he actually dropped the belt to Selby, but then it was the Selby. It was the Selby fight that had me. It was what he did after the Selby fight that had me a little bit alarmed a little bit. He started getting into these Donaire Juarez type of fights with lesser fighters and barely winning them. And I'm thinking to myself, like, is it just what is going on? He hadn't taken. His style of fighting is not meant for a type of longevity, but he hadn't had any fights where I saw him take an actual beating. In this last fight, even before this Valdez fight, it was a lot more brutal than I thought it would have been, and against a lesser fighter, and he won that with a majority decision. So I'm thinking to myself, and just off that, I know people were telling me, "Hey, Pat, Valdez is going to annihilate Gradovich." And in my mind, I'm thinking it's probably the case. unless he's added head movement and a little bit more defense instead of going in stationary, as in walking forward and going in stationary. Unfortunately, and like I said, also too, I also actually this is the only fight I actually put money on. I actually put money on a Gradovich win and inside different because the odds were just absolutely high. I'm thinking to myself, Gradovich can't be that possibly, on the that much on a slide that that those have odds like that. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe that may be a steal. So I put money on that. Oh yeah, that fight was just it was just from round one. It was just an ass whooping. Gato was pretty much the defense was nice. He just got laced. I mean, Valdez literally showed out. I can't. I mean, he busted him up, the cuts over the head. He was bleeding, and then the left hook that finally dropped Gadovich. I mean, to me that was a that was it. I was like, Jesus Christ, stop this. Um, which Russell Moore, who's usually I think is an incompetent ref, looked at him and said, okay, yeah, he had it. He had enough for the night. Valdez showed out, and he's now pretty much definitely a welcome, addition to the sport. Welcome addition to the featherweight division, and hopefully I'm pretty sure Bob will probably hotshot him to a title shot sometime either maybe this year or early next year. As for Gradovich, I don't know where he goes from here. That was just, two shaky fights, and then you have a fight like this where he was just brutalized within 4 rounds. Like, what do you do? I mean, I didn't think. I mean, he went downhill so fast. It's crazy how Valdez is a prospect. I mean, it's like, do you say, hey, Gradovich probably needs to retire, or does he really need to work with somebody else to get the defense, or to change something? Because it's clearly, his high volume punching style. Because he's getting older. I mean, you can't really do all that, especially at the lighter weight divisions. I mean, usually the fights don't usually get old before the heavier divisions, and it's one of those fights where you're like, does Gradovich either need to go up a division, which probably will not be a good idea considering his lack of power. I mean, or do you actually try to improve some of his defense, which was severely lacking in this fight. But I would like to see Gradovich at least get, after a long rest, at least get one more fight just to see what he's really like. I mean, if it's really the case of, time has took hold on him in his style of fighting, then he should probably retire. But stay tuned, I guess, for that. Then the co-main event was Gilberto Ramirez versus Arthur Abraham. Ramirez is a guy that I know I've seen on True TV and a couple other places here and then. Good guy. I mean, and good prospect at 168. I know they made the whole thing is, he'd be the first Mexican to actually win the title at 168. Someone like Perez and then Junior, they in recent times have actually failed to do so. So they actually managed to draw Arthur Abraham out of Germany, which he hadn't been since the Super Six tournaments, especially I think the last time I saw him in America. Yeah, he had pretty much taken a one-sided decision loss to Andre Ward, got schooled. So, and in that time, in Germany, the guy, has been doing his thing. He traded the belt with Stieglitz. That belt he had, and then he had the Paul Smith fights and he had Martin Murray fights. Some of them were decent fights to watch. Some of the Stiegler fights were actually were pretty entertaining. But he had gotten, of course, he had gotten older. He was starting to age, and in this fight. I thought I'd get a little bit more fireworks from this fight. More from the Ramirez side, but I was thinking that maybe Ramirez would make it hot a little early. But in this fight, though, was a little bit of a disappointment because it was pretty much all it showed was Abraham. I don't know what type of condition he was in, but he was breathing hard every round from starting early. He was just, and it wasn't like the guy was throwing anything too. I mean, he had the muffs on early, and he was doing what he usually does, walking forward, throwing punches, but he was just winded. And Ramirez did his thing. Like at first, he was saying, like, oh, okay, I thought maybe he found an answer to that by hitting that right hook to the body. And then I think in 2 or 3 or whatever one of those rounds, he staggered Abe. Like he managed to catch Abe with like a check hook or something like that, and Abe got staggered. And I think, okay, he could hurt the guy. But then after that, it was just more like Ramirez. I don't think took a whole lot of chances. Like, I mean, he did his thing, but it was just more or less he used a lot of lateral movement, a lot of movement to get Abe. And I think that to me was the actual key instead of staying in front of him. And Abe could barely touch him. I mean, it was more or less. And then although he did try to turn up in the later rounds, he did try to go at him, but I think it was just more or less. I think he was just too far gone, based off whatever his conditioning was. So yeah, Mirrors. I mean, it's one of the rare occasions. Beat the reigning champion on a flawless on all 3 cards, to become the first Mexican to become super middleweight champion. So kudos to him, and like I said, he will make some interesting fights if they can be made. With probably some of the other super middleweight champions, if possible. As for Abraham, I think he's probably nearing done as a fighter because, like I said, he was breathing hard at the end of the fight, and his output didn't necessarily match, to me, that type of conditioning. So, I mean, Abraham will probably go back to Germany and all, but that should probably be it in terms of him actually being champion again. Because I think now all the super middleweight champions right now. I mean, there's DeGale and there's Badu Jack. People we can fight, but I don't think he's not going to beat Chen. He's not going to beat them at all. I just don't see it. So yeah, so basically those are my thoughts on that fight, and then we go to the main event, Manny Pacquiao versus Timothy Bradley 3, the rubber match. Now, I've made 2 videos on these before. My other video, I remember I think I watched it. My reaction about that video. To me, it's still one of the more egregious decisions I've ever seen in boxing. Manny, who was not, this was not A-level Manny. This was like a B-level Manny, and he still, to me, won 11 out of 12 rounds in that fight. So, seeing a split decision seeing a split decision win for Brad did not go over well with me. And then the second fight, obviously, it was more competitive for Bradley, and I thought Bradley, like I said, was winning rounds. It was pretty even until the 6th round when he injured himself, and then he tried to knock out Manny Pacquiao with 1 punch, and that turned out to be a very bad idea. As Pacquiao pretty much cruised and outboxed him into, to this time a clearer, not as a wide defeat as I thought the first fight was, but nevertheless an actual clear defeat. So pretty much since that fight, Pacquiao would go on. He would face Algieri, give him probably, defeat him probably one of the widest decision losses I've ever seen. I mean, it's rare that I see an 18-point loss in boxing. You see that. I mean, usually you stop the fight when you get to something like that. And then afterwards, the fight of the millennium, the decade, whatever you want to call it, the clear loss to Floyd Mayweather Jr. Bradley himself went on this weird slide, so to speak. He went after what's his name, Chavez, and got a draw with him. To me, that was also surprising because I didn't think he would get a draw. And then afterwards, he would go and fight Jesse Vargas in the fight where Jesse Vargas, who was even a lighter puncher than Bradley, so to speak, rocked him with one of the more vicious right hands I've ever seen someone who I thought was a feather fisted fighter land. And someone like Bradley, who's usually known as having a tough chin, was all over the place. But he did win that fight, though, nonetheless. Um, so it's pretty much. And then afterwards, he got with Teddy Atlas. Everyone knows the whole fought with him and Joel Diaz. And then, Bradley goes and becomes the first man to actually stop Brandon Rios. Boxing. So, meanwhile, Manny, of course, had his shoulder issues and was out, pretty much for the year. So this was his fight where he was able to shake off ring rust. This fight started off slower than I expected it to slow up to be. And I think it's more on. It was just more on Manny just really trying to shake off the ring rust. Because Bradley was actually boxing pretty good in the first opening rounds, first maybe 2-3 rounds or so. It was not as one sided as Letterman. Well, of course, whose card for. And if I forgot to mention, Letterman's card for some of these fights on his card, especially the first one, Perez and Ramirez, was just absolutely god awful. This one, I didn't disagree. Like I said, I didn't think it was a pure shutout for Manny in the beginning. I think that's what it was. That's where they had it. But it was one of those cards where Manny wasn't dominating like that until midway of the fight, where in the seventh round. And I think it was the left hand that actually dropped Bradley for a flash. And although I think it was just a minor thing, you can just see that the fight just absolutely. You can see, just look at Bradley and his demeanor, his body language. You can tell that fight just went out of him. So I think as Manny started warming up, started landing those left hands again. I think Teddy's in the corner is like, you gotta try to motivate him. So in the ninth round, he got a little bit more aggressive. And this time, Manny absolutely walloped him with a left hand that had him doing a back somersault. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, a couple of things went to my mind. Bradley's in trouble, and this is going to be some sort of meme that's going to be all over Twitter and Instagram within the next 24 hours. And I think in that type of knockdown, and I thought Pacquiao would actually finish him in the round, but. And he escaped, but I think after that, the fight just went out of him. And then Pacquiao just pretty much cruised and just outboxed him and just hit him at will. Bradley just had no answers for the speed, had no answers, couldn't do anything. Although he did have one moment where he did actually hurt. I think it was in between the knockdown rounds where I think it was 8, where he actually managed to hurt Manny. I think. And had him all when he was in the ropes and had him in trouble. But I think that was probably his last. That was his last. That was his last good moment in the fight. And after the last knockdown, it was just more or less Pacquiao just cruised, boxed him, and even again had him Bradley hurt again the final seconds of the fight after he had his head tangled in there, and it was just like, wow. That's a 37-year-old ring rust Pacquiao, and he's doing this to a guy who everyone's perceiving as being better than what he was before. So it's across the board. The whole score was 116-110. Manny Pacquiao wins. And seemingly this will be his last fight. Now, in boxing, the last fight, you just never know. A lot of people say that. Floyd Mayweather saying that now. But you just never know what's going to go on. Now, this Pacquiao, like I said, it is clear, though, that both Floyd and Manny Pacquiao were heads above others in the welterweight division. And Bradley is just on this tier right here. This is Floyd and Pac, and this is Bradley right here. Manny Pacquiao is a great fighter. No matter what you think of him, he is a great fighter, and he is, like I said, and to deny it, it would mean that you're probably a hater. Personally, I actually, like I said, it was just personally, I would love to see him with an actual young welterweight. Not Crawford per se, because I don't think a fight with Crawford should be forced, especially if Crawford is doing this thing at 140. I know. I think that's the fight everyone wants to see him, but I would like to see. I mean, Pacquiao to me has enough clout that he could actually. I'm pretty sure he could actually make a fight with another, another top welter in this era, outside of Bradley. So, like I said, I would love to see that. I would just to see really how much he actually had left, or is he, I mean, I mean, personally, I mean, he's slowed down, but I don't think he's slowed enough where he can't be effective to actually beat any of them. And then, of course, I heard rumors of him, maybe going and fighting Canelo, which I'm also really on the fence about. So, but like I said, if it's the final fight of Manny Pacquiao, salute. Thank you for the great fights. If he's not, then like I said, hopefully there's no bullshit fights. I don't want any. I mean, Aaron really shouldn't try to keep him in house. He should really try to really make the best fight for not only the fans but financially for him as well too. Before he goes off in the sunset. As for Bradley, um, one thing I'm probably a theory. This is just theory alone. I think this fight probably has done some damage to his drawing power. Because I mean, because like I said, I mean, pretty much the whole thing with Bradley is, I mean, a lot of people say, oh yeah, he really did beat Pacquiao in the first fight. Oh no, and then yes, he'll beat Brad. This is Teddy Atlas. We are firemen. We live in the heat. All types of stuff like that. So you're thinking to myself, they're thinking that Pacquiao's already getting outboxed by Floyd Mayweather. Oh, he's gonna, he'll probably knock out Pacquiao. That didn't happen. And I can see at a point, and I already saw some of the negative comments on Bradley. Even though he took the loss in stride, he took it as a good sport. But people have really taken saying that say I saw some really derogatory stuff about him. And granted, I'm not a Bradley fan. I've never really been a Bradley fan, but he took the loss in stride. I mean, it's very much the only fight that's actually been able to beat him is Manny Pacquiao so far. I mean, that's not something to scoff at. So I would like to see it. Well, one thing I do want to mention from his interview, they was talking about he didn't remember. I don't know if he was just saying it to be funny or he didn't really remember that he got rocked in the ninth round and he went down. Because he said that the last time he said something like that was in the Ruslan fight where he got bludgeoned damn near half to death, but won. But at least you could tell you could clearly see that if you looked in his eyes that he was gone. He was his mind was elsewhere when he said that. I would say Bradley probably needs to give himself a little bit more rest, but at least I don't think he injured himself this time around. And then afterwards, really see what his next prospects are. Um, it's gonna suck because I know he did re-up with Top Rank, so it's not like he can go say, hey, Although I think he should be more forward. He should say, hey, let's go talk to him and see if we can get a fight with these PBC welters, something of this nature. Because there's not a lot of I don't think there's a lot of neutral welters that could actually fight for either or because that have that type of political advantage, I would say, to do so. So I mean, we'll see where he goes, but I mean, hopefully in. I mean, I think also another thing too with Joe Diaz. I mean, the whole fall. You also feel that Joe Diaz was the trainer behind Bradley's win against Pacquiao, and during the fight I was commenting, okay, maybe Diaz was probably laughing to himself, but I don't know how effective the Teddy Atlas Bradley pair will actually go because Teddy doesn't really have the best track record of. I mean, he'll the fighters he does work with, they do get results, but they don't last long, and it's usually because of some shit that's going on with Teddy and his demeanor. Like I said, I mean, Teddy Atlas. I mean, I've met the guy before at a couple of Friday night fights. I shook his hand a couple of times. Like I said, I mean, he does bring out the best of the fights, but I think after some time, it goes into something else, and then the fighters don't respond as well. And I can actually see that going down with Bradley. And I would love to see him go back to Joe Diaz, but I'm pretty sure I think that relationship is pretty much done and done, which is sad because Joe Diaz got him to the championship level, was in there for all his biggest fights, and honestly, Bradley probably needs somebody like Diaz more than he needs Teddy Atlas. But like I said, that remains to be seen. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those on just 2 fight cards. I know next week is the PPC with Algieri and Spence, and then also too, which I have tickets to. I'm going to be in the house for Russell versus Highland, and then Pedraza versus Smith. Can't wait for those fights. So until next time, peace.